It is always a privilege to be in this bastion of civility. Sometimes it hasn't been all that civil, but it's been a place where the rules were supposed to be enforced. And I know there are all kinds of wild allegations being thrown around. People seem to enjoy throwing them at this White House. But I think we all owe a debt of gratitude to the President this week. This has been a very big week, as an article by Caitlin Collins, Daily Caller, points out. Our President hosting 3 foreign leaders this week in what could be a big moment for foreign policy. Well, this was dated April 2nd. One guest that he invited, that I am so grateful that President Trump invited, was the Egyptian president, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. It has been my privilege with some of our other colleagues, and had other occasions alone to visit with him in Cairo, and it's just, I'm just so grateful he was invited, because Egypt is doing everything it can. The leaders of Egypt right now are doing all they can to try to prevent an international caliphate that's dominated and enforced by radical Islam. In years past, when I brought up that there are radical Islamists that are wanting to create a new Ottoman Empire, and I think it's an indictment of some of our schools, both secondary and college level, that more people are not familiar with world history. So I referred some reporters to a map. Go look at a map, look at where the Ottoman Empire was, look at what countries were included in that empire, and look at what the Islamic State is trying to do, what Al-Qaeda had tried to do, and what radical Islam, with really Muslim Brotherhood playing a powerful role in trying to create part of that caliphate. And you look at what they've done, advances made, and it's very clear that those who wanted a new Ottoman Empire that many thought was over 100 years or so ago, we would never see the rise of radical Islam controlling so much of North Africa and Europe. Then, of course, during World War II, radical Islamists raised their heads. They had something in common with Hitler. Many don't realize that radical Islamist leaders were allied with Hitler because they shared what? A common hatred for Jewish people. They both wanted Jewish people annihilated. They wanted a genocide. They want them wiped off the earth. In the early days, the United States, to our discredit, did not do enough to help the Jewish people that were the target of that genocide, both by radical Islamists, but largely led by Hitler himself. So when that great June uprising in Egypt that was completely peaceful by the Egyptian people, the only real violence was instigated by the Muslim Brotherhood. And the Muslim Brotherhood continues to this very day to plot and to strategize to try to take back over the country of Egypt. with over 90 million people or so in Egypt, with such a critical location, the Nile River running through Egypt, being right there at the Suez Canal, being right there at the gate of the Middle East, being at the gate to North Africa from the east. It is a critical linchpin for any radical Islamist that wants to start with a caliphate. Of course, the true radicals, though they have some disagreements over what real radical Islam is, they all agree that to get back this worldwide caliphate, we actually must get Egypt back under radical Islamic control. And having met President al-Sisi, visited on a number of occasions, even before he was president, this is a man that wants to do the will of the people. It is also a man who has 20/20 vision when it comes to looking at the Muslim Brotherhood. It was rather tragic when President Obama and two Republican senators started putting pressure on the 30+ million Egyptians who made clear that despite Morsi, the Muslim Brother leader, who allegedly was elected despite the claims of fraud in the election that were not followed up on because of the threats that were made by the Muslim Brothers that if you contest this election, we will burn Egypt down. But the 30 million after the election, once they saw Morsi was acting extra-constitutionally, he was taking powers that didn't belong to him, really kind of following the model of Chavez in Venezuela, where, yeah, he got elected, and then he used that position to start knocking off and eliminating competition, pulling powers under himself. Morsi was doing that. And, of course, there's video of him taking marching orders from a radical Islamic leader. So some think he was more of a puppet at the whims of radical Islamic leaders. But that was such an incredible day for the world when 30 million Egyptians, moderate Muslims, Christians, Jews, secularists, they went to the street. Some people are not aware. Yes, in Egypt, there's millennia of history there. But they went to the street, and as I've mentioned before, Mr. Speaker, the Pope there in Cairo has told me more than one occasion just how deeply emotionally moving it was to have secularist Muslims, Jews come up to him and say there in the streets as they march together peacefully, "We are so sorry for the way you've been treated by the Muslim Brotherhood. We are so sorry for the persecution that our leaders have inflicted upon you and Christians here in Egypt." What a great day for the world when they demanded, peacefully, but demanded the removal of the president who would be king, Muslim brother Morsi. And now we still have some in this country. Former President Obama and others who had such wrong-headed policies that put the world so much at risk by supporting Muslim Brotherhood, they complain that this president, our President Trump, doesn't know what he's doing. And it appears to me he knows exactly what he's doing when it comes to radical Islam, to those who want an international caliphate, to those who are moderate, who has actually had the courage to stand up, as I've not seen any national or international leader do, a room full of imams, that it is critical that we get control of Islam back from the radicals who have hijacked it. And it did a disservice when the last administration kept saying the Islamic State, the radicals in Egypt, radicals in Libya, Al-Qaeda, they're not Islam. Well, yes, they are. And that's why President al-Sisi had to make clear we need to get our religion back. Baghdadi, that's head of the Islamic State, has made very clear that, yes, the Islamic State is Islamic. And if moderate leaders don't step up and rein in radical Islam, then this world is headed for disaster. And though we've had some disagreements here recently and other matters, I still think that the media attention that's given claiming Trump is this crazy guy, that Donald Trump puts the world at risk, they are so reflective of the comments that were heard about a guy named Ronald Reagan when he was president. And as I mentioned last fall in a private meeting with now President Trump, I said, you know, my study of American history seems to indicate that those presidents that were considered by the media to be our smartest presidents, when it came to foreign matters, foreign policy, they were some of the least effective. Some cases actually terrible at foreign policy and foreign diplomacy. That it seems that some of our most successful presidents, when it comes to foreign policy, have been depicted as being just a little bit crazy. And I mentioned to now President Trump, if you remember back in the days of Saturday Night Live when it was funny and they did skits about President Reagan. And they enjoyed portraying President Reagan as walking around as if he was in some daze or stupor with his finger out asking where the red button is. Where's the red button? Like he was so anxious to start a nuclear war. But when you analyze our history of our presidents and their effectiveness at foreign policy, I think you actually end up seeing when the world is a little bit concerned about a United States president being just a little bit crazy, that guy's crazy enough he may start a nuclear war. It is a fantastic help to diplomacy, so that when a president like Reagan or Trump says, this is it, don't do this, because I will draw a red line, they can't be sure that he won't launch a nuclear war. And so I hope that he won't take anything off the table. I think he's handled some of these issues very well. As he has said, I'm not taking anything off the table. I'm not going to warn our enemies of exactly what we're going to do and when. That is wise counsel in handling foreign diplomacy. And so I'm looking forward to the days ahead, because this week in meeting with President el-Sisi, it sent a message to the world that President Obama refused to send, and that is, we think we can work with President el-Sisi. Now, he's got his hands full. Egypt has a tough road ahead because they are trying to come back from what had become quite socialized government in Egypt, a lot of people on some form of welfare, and it's always difficult when, as one of the Caesars found, when you try to move people off of bread and circuses and get them to working so that they'll find out they have value, provides self-worth, because every individual has value in God's eyes, and the founders knew that. So let's get them working. Most everybody could do something, and their leaders like President el-Sisi is attempting to do that. It was also an embarrassment for the United States and those that are observant of world affairs to have noted that an incredible world event happened since President el-Sisi has been the head of the government in Egypt. They opened a second lane to the Suez Canal. There were top leaders from most all of the more powerful nations in the world. They came to honor Egypt and their incredible accomplishment of opening a second lane. It didn't go all the way the distance, but it allows for so much more traffic through the Suez Canal. And I remember one conversation prior to that with President el-Sisi. President Obama had promised Muslim Brother leader Morsi, oh, we'll send you tanks, we'll send you jets, we'll send you money, we'll send you Apache helicopters. President Obama was more than happy to send powerful weaponry that the Muslim Brothers could use to go after Christians, to weaponize the Sinai as Morsi did. There were a lot of Americans that had the wool pulled over their eyes, including some at AIPAC that didn't realize as they sent people around to support President Morsi that, oh, gee, we think he's a lot better than people are giving him credit for. I knew who he was. I knew what he was. But some of the top folks at AIPAC did not realize you don't want to be supporting a Muslim Brother president or leader anywhere. And in fact, we should do right here in the United States what Egypt did, and that is list the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. Now, it's true in the United States. Some of their leaders have said, oh, no, we don't want to get to violence, because the indications are they believe that they're making so much progress, and they really did under the leadership of President Obama. The Muslim Brotherhood made vast strides in power in the United States without violence. So they didn't want to jeopardize that, but as some of the documents that have been seized over the last 30 years make clear, yeah, we'll use peaceful means as long as we can, but of course at some point when we're no longer successful in gaining the upper hand in America, we'll have to support violence to do the final takeover. But some people here get it. They understand the threat that the Muslim Brotherhood is. And so it's great that President Trump invited Egyptian President el-Sisi to be here to meet with him. And, Mr. Speaker, I look forward to the day when we have enough time to have President el-Sisi stand right here where Prime Minister Netanyahu has stood at least I think 3 times, where other great international leaders have stood and spoken to a joint session. I look forward to the day when we have President el-Sisi stand here. The man is a true hero for the world, for everyone except the Muslim Brotherhood. President Trump also welcomed King Abdullah from Jordan. King Abdullah, leader of a majority Muslim country. And of course, those that have studied the Bible know that so many of the biblical references actually are right there in Jordan. Some wondered why President Obama didn't get much encouragement from those around him to go ahead and do a status of forces agreement with Iraq. We know that Iran was making so many of the people and weapons inside the country of Iraq, while American soldiers were fighting, losing their lives, being maimed, arms and legs. Our great heroes were carrying out the will of the U.S. government. And it seemed that President George W. Bush pretty well had a status of forces agreement teed up. He probably could have finalized it. For all the criticism that some heap on to President Bush, he is really actually a very gracious man. You look at the times he entertained people at the White House and was so gracious, people like Ted Kennedy that would walk right outside and trash him after he'd been so gracious to him. But he actually left a hanging curveball for President Obama to hit after he came in as president. And from what I understood from people in the Bush administration, they thought this will help his presidency to come in and very quickly sign the status of forces agreement that should be easy to get done. But one of the things, well, there were two main things, it seems, from what I can figure out, that stood in the way of the status of forces agreement. One was President Obama really didn't want to leave troops in Iraq, not even a small force to help solidify what we had taken away from the radicals. And he didn't use good judgment, which has now cost the lives of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in the Middle East because of his short-sightedness. But another reason that there is no status of forces agreement was an element I didn't realize till I was talking to my friend Joel Rosenberg, great author, New York Times bestseller, selling author. But Joel has done so much fantastic research into Israel, Egypt, Middle East, and his novels reflect so much history that's accurate. But he was pointing out to me, and I've not seen it until he pointed that out, and I started doing some research on it. But some of the crazies that think that the 12th Imam, who was thrown in a well as a child, around 10 years of age, he's going to someday come back and take over and be the great Mahdi, the 12th Imam, that unites the world caliphate, puts everyone under radical Islamic control of the Mahdi, the 12th Imam. But there are, so most of the 12ers believe, those that believe the 12th Imam is coming back. Some have said they've already seen him on short appearances. But there are prophecies that the 12th Imam will first come back and take charge in a small town, I believe it's pronounced Kufa. And kind of like the Bible prophesied that Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. Well, those that believe 12th Imam is going to come back, and actually, as I understand, they do believe in Jesus. They believe he's going to fight at the right hand of the 12th Imam, so they don't have anything close to the beliefs that Christians do and that Jews, Orthodox Jews do. But the only way he can come back and begin the start of this reign is he comes back to Kufa. It cannot be any infidel soldiers, infidels in the land, occupying the land. So if the United States had an occupying force in Iraq, it's going to impede the ability of the 12th Imam to come back and start the beginning of the worldwide caliphate that will fall in place thereafter. And of course, he's supposed to emerge from chaos. And there were those in Iran that thought, not at the top, at the top, not rank and file people, but some at the top thought, look, he's supposed to come out of chaos. He'll appear here in this small town, start the beginning of the accumulation of the world caliphate. And so Iran, if you were a crazy top leader in Iran that believed that's where the 12th Imam's coming back, you could not allow the United States, that they consider infidels, the great Satans, you could not allow the United States to have a status of forces agreement so that we had what they consider infidel soldiers. So it wasn't anticipation that Iran would fight so hard to keep America from agreeing to keep soldiers in Iraq. And part of that is because President Obama did not allow people who had studied radical Islam, that had really, now he had Muslim brothers around him. That's what Muslim Brotherhood publication indicated in December of 2012, I believe is when that article came out, and bragging about the 6 people that were in top positions, people like Imam Majid and El-Biyari was on the Homeland Security Advisory Council, the top advisory council for Secretary of Homeland Security Janet Napolitano, and I pointed out conflicts there that were disregarded and problems that his allegiance was not to us, it was for a more radical Islam, for the Muslim Brotherhood at least. And finally, when he tweeted out that the caliphate, the world caliphate's inevitable and people just need, Americans need to get used to it, they finally decided to let him rotate off the advisory council. But the Muslim Brothers were bragging about the people they had in top positions that were advising President Obama. There are some holdovers in positions who are not top Muslim Brothers, but they are in positions that I hope this president will be able to root out. And I think it helps a great deal that he talks to President al-Sisi, he talks to President Abdullah, because some of these radical Islamists are also a great threat to King Abdullah in Jordan. And we need him keeping peace on the eastern side of Israel. And then you also had the Chinese president come, and that's a matter, we got to deal with China because they are a power and they own a lot of our debt. But I appreciate what was reported this week. Ali Waqed at Breitbart reported from Tel Aviv that President Abdul Fattah al-Sisi visit to the United States will be an opportunity to undermine the Muslim Brotherhood's standing in Washington, a former Egyptian ambassador to the United States said. And this is Abdul Rauf al-Ridi told Egyptian paper Al-Sharuk that, quote, Egyptian-American relations are entering a new phase and the degree of their success relies on Egyptian efforts, unquote. He went on to say Presidents Trump and Sisi can break the ice created during the Obama administration without doing injustice to Obama. He adopted the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood. He's talking about President Obama. President Obama would never admit that. Who knows whether he was taken in or really understood what he was embracing. But one other great thing that I want to express appreciation for is the president's steps on trying to stop illegal immigration into this country. But Mr. Speaker, as I've talked about a number of times, having spent so much time all night on the border, the drug cartels control traffic coming into America. And they have people that they're smuggling in through their coyotes who actually get paid to bring them in. That money goes to the drug cartels. And they coordinate, the drug cartels, according to the Border Patrolmen, they coordinate sending in these groups of illegal aliens into the United States. They knew when they sent a big group in on one or more rafts that all of our Border Patrolmen would have to flock to that area and start in-processing them, go through their checklist of questions, and that is when they could send massive amounts of drugs in. So what President Trump is doing is a great favor to the United States. When he stops illegal immigration, he's not just stopping illegal immigration, he's stopping